Yeah, you kind of had me convinced with you could have sex with the robots. You had me sold right there.
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. My name, of course, is Patrick Kuhn, alongside my co-host, as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
It's going well, dude. How are you?
Good. I finally got back to stand-up. I kind of took a little bit of a break with Shocktober and all that other stuff that we had going on. So I took about a month and a half off, I think. And so I just recently got back on the horse. This past Thursday, we're recording this on Saturday. I had to think of what day it was for a second there. And it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. The turnout wasn't great, but
where'd you do it at?
Good.
Where was this one?
Vulcan Lounge.
Okay, cool.
They had their monthly comedy show, and the woman that runs it asked me to do it, which was kind of out of the blue. I was planning on going just because I enjoy going to the shows, and she asked me like a few hours before the show started. I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be there anyways. I'd feel weird if I was like, nah, I'm not going to do it. But I was still sitting in the audience. So
yeah, I
would have liked to gotten like maybe an open mic in before I had done the show, because this is a book show and it's kind of a big deal. So, but everything went really well. Like I didn't have to take up my notes or anything. I just went up there and kind of did my thing, and I thought I did really well considering the circumstances. And the audience was kind of weird, but somebody described me as the least hated comic on the show. So I felt pretty good about that, because the guys that were actually like headlining, they didn't do very well.
Yeah, that's a weird thing to have happen. I don't know, just like to headline a show in a bar, but you're not really known. Like, I don't know. It's just weird. A weird world.
One of the guys, Cam Connor, I think is his last name. He was really funny. I mean, I liked both of the guys that were kind of touring together and kind of co-headlined or whatever you want to call it. I thought they were both funny. It was just it was weird because they had like two completely different styles. Like one's like super energetic and the other one's kind of, it almost like reminded me, I don't know if this was like just his personality, because I actually didn't get to talk to the guy after the show, or this is just like a character that he has, but it seemed like he was kind of doing like a Woody Allen type of impression.
Oh yeah.
He was like super intelligent and like, it was like talking about all this like philosophical questions, and it's like I do dick jokes.
Yeah, I'm sure that fit in really well in Evansville, Indiana, at the Boca Lounge.
Yeah, so he didn't do very well. I actually thought he was really funny, but like you said, those guys don't really do very well, because I had opened for another guy a few months ago that was kind of like that, and there was a lot of just like awkward pauses where there was no laughter. Every once in a while, like every couple of minutes, he would get a pretty big laugh, but it was just like there was a lot of awkward silence.
Oh my God, that is like fucking awful. For like somebody with some social anxiety like me, that is like nightmare stuff.
Yeah.
Like to put yourself out there and not be well received imagine that's tough.
Yeah, I generally try to do pretty quick little like setup, punchline setup, because if people aren't laughing after like 30 seconds, I'm like, Jesus Christ, like I just want to be done. So yeah, I generally can't do like really long stuff that I don't think I'm going to get a punchline for the next minute, because then I just have a panic attack. So I generally try to stick with like really short, kind of quick hitters. I'm also used to doing only like 5 to 8 minutes typically. So that's kind of what you have to do. Like you just have to be a machine gun. Like you can't really like have these big premises because you only have a few minutes to get through it. So yeah, I got back into it and it was fun. I'm looking forward to, I have a couple of shows coming up here shortly. So I'm actually doing another one at the someplace else bar downtown. Yeah. So that should be interesting. I actually have a few people at work. One of the guys that I work with actually bartends at that bar.
Oh yeah.
So that'll be interesting. He won't be there because he'll be at where I work, but yeah, it's It's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've been to someplace else once.
Oh, yeah?
For those not from Evansville, yeah, it's a local gay bar. Yeah, whenever, I don't know, I think you might have still been working at the retail store I work at.
We've said it before,
I
right?
know, I don't like to promote the where I work, but that's how Pat and I met, was at work, and there used to be like a group of us that would go out pretty often, actually, on Saturday nights, and like
never got an invite.
You and Chrissy were always there. Like whenever we used to go to Stoney's and stuff.
I've never been there before.
Stoney's doesn't exist anymore. Where we used that bar we used to play beer pong at.
I know what Stoney's
You were
is.
fucking there. Anyways, but you were not at someplace else.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, it's a cool little dive bar in town. Yeah. I'm kind of curious to see like how that goes for you, just because I know they do drag shows and stuff there, but I didn't know they do comedy shows and whatnot.
I'm intrigued by it. I've never done stand up at a gay bar before. Not that
I'm trying really to running the jokes of yours I've heard through my head to see if anything's offensive.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I do go to some dark places, but not necessarily that I think anybody would get offended by. I mean, I have an abortion joke. I have a few other jokes that people don't like, but I mean, I love them, so I keep telling them.
I mean, your abortion joke is my favorite of your jokes. It's fucking hilarious, but
it was weird because I never really know what people are going to get. I generally assume that people are going to get offended by something that I say throughout my set, and I never really know what it is, what it's going to be. But they didn't like the fact that I said that there wasn't a God. I have a joke where I say that there is no God, and they got really awkward.
We're at a Boca Lounge?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of, I mean, Indiana's not the Bible Belt necessarily, but Southern Indiana, there's some Bible thumpers here and there, so.
Yeah, that didn't go well. That was kind of
Did they boo you, or did they just go, oh?
No, I heard someone audibly gasp when I said it. And I almost I entertained the thought of reacting to their gasp, but then I don't know. I just don't, I generally don't like to, I kind of just do my own thing. I don't, unless somebody's being super obnoxious, I don't really talk to the audience too much.
I don't know. Maybe someplace else would be a little bit more liberal in your jokes. It won't get. I don't know. Maybe you'll find your niche.
Maybe I'll just start doing tours.
Yeah, do a gay bar tour.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we went kind of off the rails a little bit. Normally, we start off each episode by kind of checking in with each other. We call it what we're into. So, what are you into this week?
I started finally. I had been putting it off, and now I'm 4 episodes behind. But I started watching Westworld, which is the new show on HBO. 4 episodes have aired, and I have watched half of them. So I finished episodes 1 and 2 within the last few days, and I am really digging this show. I don't know how much you know about it, Pat, but it is based. I know Michael Crichton made a movie in the 70s called Westworld that he wrote and directed. And I don't know if that was based on one of his books or not. And I guess I should have done that research first, but it is based on a Michael Crichton property, who is the same guy who wrote Jurassic Park. Mm-hmm. So apparently, he was very fond of the theme park genre. I don't know what else he necessarily wrote, but his big one so far that I know of, I don't know. There's other movies based on his work.
Yeah, he does a ton of stuff. But I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
But he revisited the theme park thing a couple times. So yeah, Westworld is about a theme park. It's set in the future. I don't think it's set a year yet. It's
a theme park set in the future, or the entire show?
The show is set in the future based on the technology they're using. But basically, this group of people have put together this theme park where very rich people can pay to be transported.
Hunt people.
Kind of, in a way. But they get transported to the Wild West, essentially. Okay. And within the Wild West that they get sent to, there are android. They're basically robots, but I don't know. They haven't really explained so far in the episodes I've seen, like, how they're created, because you can have sex with them. And so it's not like,
nice.
It's not like, like there's flesh, and when you shoot them, there's blood. So it's almost maybe like a Terminator situation. I'm not sure. Or it's, completely organic, and
sexy Terminator situation.
And they plant these memories and stuff into these robots' heads, but they think that their world is real. They're not, sentient. That's right. That's the right word. Sentient. Am I pronouncing that right?
Sure.
Okay, they're not sentient. They think that they're living in the Wild West, and they're programmed to like the newcomers, which are the people paying to visit the park.
Sure.
And once you visit the park, you can do whatever you want. Some of the robots kind of get you to try to go on quests with them, and that's what some people do. But you can basically kill people, cause a ruckus, and that's your way to do that. It's kind of a cool concept. The basis for the show is that some of the robots are starting to become a little bit more sentient, and that is kind of I think the show is going to basically explore that and dig deeper in. I think there's definitely some layers to pull back from Westworld, and that's where things are headed. There's a great cast. Evan Rachel Wood plays one of the robots. Anthony Hopkins is kind of like I wouldn't say the owner of the park, but he's kind of like the head developer, it seems like. Who else is in it? Let's see, Ed Harris, one of the weird guys from Always Sunny, the brothers, the two brothers.
Yeah.
I don't forget what their name. Oh, the Doyles?
Oh, Doyles, I think.
Yeah, something like that. One of those brothers is in it. And then, I forget his name, but, he's from Casino Royale. He's the American agent at the poker table. He's also in it as well. And I'm sure I'm missing a couple other people because there are some bigger names in it, but, really great cast. I really love the show. It's really awesome. I find that the stuff that takes place in the theme park is much more interesting than the stuff that takes place where they are developing the robots and kind of putting programs into the robots. And, that stuff is a little boring, but everything that takes place within Westworld has been really exciting so far. And it's really a cool concept. So, it's definitely a show I'm going to stick with and I recommend.
Yeah, you kind of had me convinced with, you could have sex with the robots. You had me sold right there.
Yeah. I think that's why a lot of people go to Westworld. That and to kill people. It's kind of a cool concept. So I can't wait to see where they go with it.
For sure. I actually, looked to see if I could watch this on the internet legally, of course. And I could not find a site that I could watch it on.
Legally,
of course. And so I haven't checked this out yet, but I'm definitely intrigued. I've heard a lot of good things about it. I did not know that you could have sex with the robots yet. So that was interesting.
Yeah, you seem really sold on that.
I kind of have tunnel vision.
All right, man. That being said, what are you into?
I mentioned, I think it was at last episode, kind of in passing, that I have been listening to some audiobooks on Audible. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. I love the idea of me reading. Like I made it sound like I can't read. I used to read all the time. Like I like the idea of me being like a hardcore reader. I used to read like 2 or 3 books a month, which for me is a pretty big deal. I just don't have the time anymore between the podcast, YouTube, stand up, and just trying to work 40 hours a week. It wasn't going to happen. So I decided to check out Audible. I'd used it, sparingly in the past, and my buddy Jeff suggested a book that sounded really interesting. The Girl with All the Gifts. And like I said, I just don't have time to read. So when he had suggested that, he doesn't suggest books very often. So when he does, I kind of tend to take his opinion pretty seriously, because if he says that I would like something, I generally do. So I downloaded that particular book, The Girl with All the Gifts, about a month ago, and I've kind of been using Audible ever since. I've almost done with 3 books, and I'm just kind of go down the list and kind of talk about how I feel about all 3 of them. The first one, of course, is The Girl with All the Gifts, was written by M.R. Carey. It's a zombie apocalypse book, which I'm a huge fan of that particular genre. It is kind of getting wore out a little bit. And so I actually really liked this particular book because it kind of jumps from first person, like throughout the characters. Like you get each character's perspective, and one of the perspectives is a zombie. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. Basically the concept is this is a post-apocalyptic world, and there's just like little patches of human beings. And one of the patches is this research facility. They're trying to basically just find a cure, and they have hunted and kind of gathered all of these zombies, children that are kind of high functioning, and they just test them and like retention and stuff like that. Basically it's a classroom, and they just teach them, and then kind of shit hits the fan, and that's the book. I will say that is very entertaining. I did enjoy it a lot. My one complaint is the fact that the author doesn't always describe things very well. Like, I don't think that that's necessarily one of his strengths as a writer. The perfect example of that is he described, and I don't remember what exactly he was describing, but he described something as a bag of pissed off cats. And I just thought that was just a weird way to describe something. And so I really enjoyed the book. I like the characters and all that stuff. So he definitely is a very talented writer. I just didn't like how he described certain things. If I'm not mistaken, he wrote the screenplay as well, because they made this into a movie that got released, a limited release a couple of months ago. So I'm interested to see how his writing's going to be when he doesn't have to describe everything that you're looking at, because obviously in a movie you don't have to do that. So I'm definitely curious to check it out, because I did enjoy the book a lot. I'm just going to go ahead in the next one, because I'm assuming you haven't read this book.
No.
I'm assuming you haven't read any of these books. The next book that I read, and I'm using read in quotes, obviously, because I just listened to it like it's a podcast, but is The Name of the Wind, which is written by Patrick Rothfuss, I guess is how you...
Swing and a miss. I'm going to guess.
It's actually the first of the King Killer Chronicle books. It's basically just a fantasy kind of Game of Thrones-esque setting, where I kind of complained about the girl with all the gifts kind of not being great at describing things. This particular author, he like over describes everything. And so it took me a little bit to kind of get used to that, because I was used to listening to this other book that he wasn't great at describing things. So it took me a little bit to get used to it. But once I did, I couldn't put it down, I guess, is to use a book term, even though, again, I wasn't actually reading it. It's one of those books that there's just like a shit ton of threads, and the way he kind of weaves everything together is just, it's fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I haven't started reading the second book, The Wise Man's Fear, just because I've actually heard that it doesn't really focus on kind of the main story. It's more like almost like a side quest. And so I'm a little bit curious if I'd like it as much. Plus, he hasn't written the third book yet, and so I'm kind of afraid that I'm going to really get into this story even more than I already am, and then I'm going to get to the end of the second book and then just have to sit there and wait. So, yeah, if you like that type of story, if you're anxiously waiting for the new Game of Thrones book or something like that, and you haven't read this book, definitely check it out. The last one, and I think I'm going to share a really kind of unpopular opinion on the last one. I started listening to The Gunslinger, which is the first Dark Tower book. Yeah. Of course, written by Stephen King. I'm about an hour from being done. I'm not that crazy about it. Yeah. I don't know. I obviously I really enjoy his writing, so it has nothing to do with that. It's just, I'm not sure if I necessarily like the story that much. I don't know. It's just something about it. Like, I understand that there's 7 or 8 books in this whole Dark Tower series. I appreciate when a book tells a story and it's part of this larger narrative, but it seems like it has a beginning and an end. This book just seems like it's just setting the stage for everything else that's coming up, which is great. But at the same time, it's like, I want this book to be satisfying as well. And I just don't think that I'm getting it. And there has been certain parts of it that I'm like, okay, this is really cool. And if the other books are like this, I'll probably dig those, but it just seems like it's just building. And I'd rather it just be, okay, here's the start of this particular story, and it's part of this larger narrative, but I feel like it's just kind of setting the stage, and I kind of have to read the rest of the books to get the rest of the story. And I'm not sure if I necessarily like that.
Yeah, so I bought The Gunslinger a few months ago, and I just never read it. I never got into reading it. I do want to read it before the movie comes out, and that's still about a half a year away, so I'll probably start it once things kind of slow down at work. That being said, like, usually I get excited about reading Stephen King's books, but for me, this is kind of blasphemous, because obviously, like, Shawshank Redemption is great and people love The Green Mile, but I think Stephen King's at his best with the horror element. Yeah. And I'm not too excited to read his, like, sci-fi western. Yeah. So I do want to read it, and I am excited for the movie still, but honestly, I'd rather just finish The Stand personally. So I'm a big fan of Stephen King's horror. I just don't know how into this I'm going to be either.
I mean, it's beautifully written. It's interesting at parts. I just feel like, again, I'm just getting the beginning, and that kind of bums me out a little bit. I mean, I understand because it's the first of 7 or 8 parts, but like I said, I wish it would just like The Name of the Wind is part of this larger story.
Yeah.
But I felt like I got the story, and he's just continuing it with the other books. But I don't know. I'm not being as articulate about it as I'd like. But there's another small complaint. I actually just forgot about it until just now. He goes back and forth between time. Like he jumps around. It always just takes me a little bit to realize, okay, the gunslinger is telling a story from his past. Like there's not a break. It's just like all of a sudden he's telling a story from his past, and it just takes me a second to realize. And it kind of jumps back and forth the timeline a lot. And so it's sort of confusing that way as well. But once you kind of get used to it, then it's not a problem. But it's kind of hard to tell, like, when did this happen in correlation to this other story that he told? And it's kind of hard for me to tell which came first and what timeline I'm actually on. And so I don't know. I think you would like it, but like I said, it's...
Yeah, I plan on reading it definitely before the movie comes out. I do have a question though. I've never listened to an audiobook.
Yeah.
How long is The Gunslinger? How long does it take somebody to read that to you?
I think it was 8 hours total. So it's actually, I think it's the shortest of all of the Dark Tower books. Yeah. Like The Name of the Wind was like 28 hours. It's, from what I understand, it's a fairly long book. And then The Girl with All the Gifts was like 14 hours, something like that.
Gotcha. I was just curious.
Yeah. All right. So our next segment is just plainly called Comics. Tyler and I read a ton of comics each week, and we like to spotlight one or two. So what'd you read this week?
I read the Wonder Woman 75th anniversary special. Well, it's actually Wonder Woman 75th anniversary #1. I can't imagine there's going to be a #2, but maybe there will be. I don't know. Either way, this is a pretty thick book. They put a lot of stuff in there to kind of celebrate Wonder Woman's 75 years existing. There's a lot of short stories in it. There's some, I guess not, you wouldn't say stories, short comics that are just like a couple pages long. There's a beautiful cover. There's 2 covers. The one I got was beautifully done by Jim Lee. So it's a gorgeous book. My favorite part of it is actually a part where it highlights some of Brian Boland's famous Wonder Woman covers from the 90s. He was the artist who did the cover of The Killing Joke.
Yeah.
So there's some beautiful sketches from him in there and his covers from the 90s, and I really enjoyed looking at that artwork. And then just some other cool little things here and there. Like there's like an interview where Lois Lane is interviewing Wonder Woman, and it's like you would see in a magazine where they interview people, and done exactly like that. And it's a really cool conversation between 2 of DC's biggest female characters. So that was pretty awesome as well. What I liked about the short stories that are told throughout it is that each one kind of highlights a different Wonder Woman that we've seen over this last 75 years, or a different attitude that Wonder Woman has. So you have like the ones where she's helping a little girl find herself and find her powers, and it's like kind of the nurturing part of Wonder Woman. And then you of course have the stuff that takes place in the Amazonia, where she is a badass, and there's awesome fight scenes. And then there's the stuff that like Superman makes an appearance in one, and just the relationship there. So each story does a great job of kind of highlighting some of the things that we love about Wonder Woman, or I love about Wonder Woman. I don't know what your take on the character is. I know you're not the biggest DC guy, but it was a really cool. It was, in a way, a retrospective and a celebration, and it was just really fun to read. It was a lot of bang for your buck because it was so much to it. I do hope that they do something else for Wonder Woman 75th. I'll be honest, I haven't read a ton of Wonder Woman comics, and this celebration of her 75 years makes me want to definitely get into one of the runs that she has, because I don't know, the storytelling was really great, and I think that she's a very underutilized character, especially as it goes for other media. And I don't know, just great stories, great storytelling, and amazing artwork in this book.
Yeah, I hope I don't come off as sexist, but I have very little interest in reading a Wonder Woman story. I've heard the new book after Rebirth is pretty good, but even then I'm not intrigued by it. I think the movie looks awesome. I mean, the little that we know, just judging by the trailer, it looks cool, but I really have no interest.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that, because they just celebrated Batman's 75th, 2 years ago?
Something
so
like that.
She's not that much younger than the Batman character. And when Batman's obviously younger than Superman. So, you know, they're called the Trinity within the DC, and they really did all three start around the same time. And yeah, I'm that character has gone through a lot of different things over her 75 years. And to me, she's still the strongest female character in all of comic books. So, it's definitely cool reading that, and it intrigues me to read more of her stuff for sure.
Cool, man.
All right. What'd you read this week?
I read Wolfcop #1, which Wolfcop is
Jesus Christ. Are you kidding me? They made a comic.
Yes, they did. They're actually expanding the whole universe. It's actually really cool.
Yeah, that sounds really awesome. I don't want to read Wonder Woman, but let me tell you about Wolfcop, the movie where a guy's wolf dick turns from a human dick into a wolf dick.
Like I said earlier, I have tunnel vision. Anyways, like Tyler kind of alluded to, I've talked about this movie on a past episode a while back. It's super campy, and despite Tyler's negative vibes, I think it's actually a lot of fun. I enjoy it a lot. I actually might watch it tonight, now that I think about it. Anyways, and this comic book, like I said, they're kind of expanding the universe. There's going to be a sequel to the movie. Now there's a comic book, and I know that they're working on some other stuff too. So I am actually really excited about it because, like I said, I really enjoyed the movie a lot, and I really fucking love this comic. Like, it was a lot of fun.
Jesus.
I let you talk about Wonder Woman.
I'm sorry, but then you're like, I have no interest in reading a Wonder Woman comic, but let me tell you about Wolfcop. Sorry.
Anyways, it was really interesting because it was a #1, and so you would assume that there was a lot of exposition and starting this whole story arc and all that. Nope. It was just like, it started and it ended in one issue, and I thought that was really cool. Like, it was really fast paced. It didn't do a ton of like exposition. It knew what it was. It knew what made the movie good. And it kind of just picked up where that left off. And I thought that was really, really fun and really cool.
So through Shocktober, which we're going to get to in depth in our main topic, I constantly go through Netflix looking for something new to watch, and I always hover over Wolfcop, and I'm very intrigued, and I really want to watch it. I've talked about how much I like werewolves in the past, and then I decide that I don't want to see a human dick turn into a wolf dick.
It's like 30 seconds, man.
That's a lot of dick, man. I think you're under. That's 30 seconds is long. So I've never
Maybe
watched
it's not
it.
even 30 seconds.
I've never watched it because I don't want to see that. You should have just left that off.
I regret even saying that.
So I don't know. Maybe I'll watch it tonight as well. But I've always hovered over it. I've always been like, man, I should watch this, and then I just don't want to see that.
We should like sync it up and like watch it. You'll go home, watch it while I watch it, and we should like talk to each other on the phone. Did you ever do that when you were a kid?
No, I don't think so.
That was a thing though, right? It wasn't just some weird thing that I did.
I could see maybe long distance relationships, but you probably didn't deal with a girl, huh?
No, I didn't.
All right, well.
I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say about Wolfcop #1. It's a lot of fun.
Hard to believe there's not a lot of exposition in Wolfcop #1.
I mean, they give you basically everything you need from the title.
Exactly.
All right, so you ready for some nerd news?
Yeah, so every week we go through all the big nerd headlines that have come up since the last time we spoke. We call it nerd news. This week, unfortunately, is not as good as last week was. Just a couple kind of lackluster stories here, but I don't want to bury the lead too much. So the first one happened like right after we recorded last week. Apparently, Deadpool 2 has lost its director.
Yep.
Tim Miller, who directed the first one, has stepped away, and it's basically because of difference of opinion with Ryan Reynolds, which is kind of crazy. As more and more stuff came out through the week, and it's all kind of mostly they had a different vision for the sequel. Like, it seems like Tim Miller wanted to make it more of a spectacle, which surprises me, and Ryan Reynolds wanted to basically just stick with what they knew, make it very similar in tone to the first one, and not do anything too fancy. So that difference of opinion, which I'm sure there was more to it than that, led to them splitting. I also think that I read the casting of Cable was also, they had different opinions on that as well. So Tim Miller ended up stepping away. So this by no means, for me at least, makes me nervous about the sequel. Like, I think they'll do fine. I think they'll make it, bring these characters in. They've talked about like Domino and Cable, and it'd be a lot of fun. But it does kind of bum me out because that core creative team of Tim Miller, Ryan Reynolds, and then Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, the two writers. They were the ones that got this movie off the ground and made it. And, you know, people speculate that Tim Miller was the person who leaked the test footage that kind of got this movie made. And, you know, he was just a really big driving force behind it. And obviously Fox is going to have to choose Ryan Reynolds over him if they're disagreeing, because he's the one in the movie playing Deadpool.
Yeah.
But it is disappointing, in my opinion, that Tim Miller exited the project, because that first Deadpool movie was like his baby in a way. So it's disappointing for sure. And I'm not necessarily nervous, but just a little bummed out for Tim Miller.
Yeah, it's funny because Deadpool, the original, is kind of a spectacle in itself. And to want to even go more over the top is kind of interesting. That would just seem to me like it would be batshit crazy.
The way I think about it is, I doubt that he was like, all right, so that worked, let's go a completely different direction. I would think that he was going the tongue-in-cheek route, like most superhero movies. They do their first one, then the second one, they make it everything bigger. And that was kind of his tongue-in-cheek way of making fun of that.
Yeah, kind of meta humor.
Yeah, exactly. And they just didn't see eye to eye. I imagine that's what it is. Maybe he did just like get crazy and want to go all out. And
I heard that it would, I want to say that the budget was like double the first one if they made the version that he wanted to make, or something crazy like that.
But the budget for the first one, I don't think it was that much.
No, it wasn't. For a superhero movie, it really wasn't. And that was what kind of blew it out of the water, is because they didn't spend that much and it made a ridiculous amount of money, especially for a rated R movie.
Yeah, and Deadpool 2 is just going to rake it in.
Like, for sure.
They could triple, quadruple the budget and it'd still make its money back tenfold. So, we'll keep you posted whenever they announce a new director. Next one is Pixar related. There was just a couple dates that got shuffled, and I'm sure we've talked about these movies before, but just in case, I wanted to bring it up again real quick. Incredibles 2 and Toy Story 4 basically switched release dates. Incredibles 2 is coming out in 2018, and then Toy Story 4 is going to come out in 2019. I'm pretty sure we've talked about Toy Story 4 before. I think we're both a little nervous about it, even though they're 3 for 3.
Because they should have died at the end of the third one.
Oh, yeah. We definitely talked about it before. But I'm definitely excited for Incredibles 2. That's a long time coming. I'm excited to see what direction they go. Obviously, the characters will probably be a lot older this time around, which should be interesting. But we'll be getting that a year earlier. I'm not quite sure what Pixar's movie next year is in 2017. Do you?
No, not off the top of my head.
Huh. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'll have something in 2017, and then the next 2 years after that, it'll be sequels again, which, unless it's a Cars movie, seemed to work out okay for them.
Yeah, I'm kind of lukewarm on The Incredibles.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's fun, but...
I hate fun.
Unless it's Wolfcop.
This next one I threw in last minute because I was kind of curious on your opinion on something. So this week we saw a video game release for our new gen consoles, so PS4 and Xbox One. It was a re-release of Skyrim, which was a very popular Elder Scrolls game that came out for the 360 and the PS3 a couple years ago. The thing that I wanted to ask you about, because it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So like, this game is insanely popular. I'm really interested in buying the re-release, because I bought the original and just never played it and ended up selling it because it was such a time suck and I didn't have time for it at that point. But they're charging $60 for this thing. Yeah. Which is how much a new game costs. And I'm sure that it comes with like all the DLC and it comes with everything you could possibly want Skyrim related. But come on, like $60? Like, this game just is like 4 or 5 years old at this point, right? I don't know if I necessarily agree that it should be $60, but I mean, it should be pretty close. I mean, they're giving you a full game. So now, whether or not you've played that full game. So the Arkham re-release, Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, 2 games, remastered, $50. Okay. Now, granted, from what I understand, Skyrim is a lot more gameplay. Yep. But I don't know. They're still giving you a full game. It's not like they... Yeah, but it's a game that's old. It's not that old. It's old enough. I don't know. I just wanted to get your opinion on the price. I mean, if they give you the DLC, I don't see any problem with it. I won't buy it. I almost said I probably won't buy it. I won't buy it. I have nothing against these games. I never got into them, and I have so much stuff right now that I'm playing that I just know that
it's going to get lost in the shuffle like the original game did 4 or 5 years ago.
It's not something I'm going to buy anytime soon. I got a lot of other stuff to play through first. Last one is the elephant in the room that we haven't talked about yet. So Walking Dead premiered last week, and we finally found out who died. That was like the big thing through the summer, was who was going to get it, and we found out. So that being said, we probably want to do a spoiler warning right here, right?
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes. So if you're listening and you don't want to find out who died, go to the show notes and check out the timestamps and fast forward it, and we'll be talking about our Shocktober recap.
That being said, if you're listening to this podcast and you don't want to know who dies,
it's probably been spoiled for you already.
I saw it all. I've seen it all over Facebook. I've seen it all over comicbook.com. Like, it's just out there at this point. So the way that it happens is, and I'll be brief about this because anybody listening right now already knows the answer, I'm sure. Abraham gets killed, and then Daryl fucks up, and Glenn gets killed for Daryl's fuck up.
Yep.
So that's the gist of it. What did you think of the overall episode?
I thought, well, I'll go ahead and talk about the deaths first.
That works.
And then I'll talk about the episode itself. So I thought that it was going to be Sasha, first off.
You told me that before we started recording. Why Sasha? Why was that your guess?
Because one of the things that I'm kind of lukewarm on The Walking Dead. We've talked about this before.
Yeah, I think we both are at this point.
One of the reasons is they have this formula where they will kind of artificially create this drama by building this relationship between these two characters, and then they knock one off. And then that other person's sad or depressed or angry or whatever it is. And the last couple episodes of last season, they had really been building the Sasha and Abraham thing. Abraham's a really big character in the comic books, so I didn't think they would kill him off. So I figured there's a reason why they'd been building this relationship. So they were going to knock off one of them, and I assumed that it was going to be Sasha, which I guess I picked the right relationship. I just picked the wrong person.
Okay.
So that's why I thought it was going to be Sasha.
Okay.
So I was a little bit disappointed that it was Abraham, because I do really like that character in the comic books, but I think the way it went down, I appreciated, because that's that character. Like, I don't think he would have been crying or anything like that. I think they did it the right way. Like, he kind of stood up and he took it like a man. And so I appreciated that.
Like a champ, if you will.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And then the Glenn thing, I didn't think they were gonna do it. I was genuinely surprised by that.
Well, then I guess they probably achieved what they were going for sure. I was hoping that they wouldn't go. I had a bad feeling that they were just going to stick to the comics on that one.
Yeah.
But I didn't want them to, because I think we've done favorite Walking Dead character before. And as of now in this show, Glenn was always my favorite character. So,
yeah,
he's the oldest character on the show besides Rick. So, him dying was a bit of a blow for sure.
Yeah, I felt like, why tease it at the end of what it was season 6? This is season 7, right?
Yeah.
So why tease it at the end of season 6? Like they did, if they're just going to do it exactly like the comic books.
Because then over 20 million people watch.
Which is that was a little crazy.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that they did change it a little bit, but then still stuck with the comic books. But I don't know. I was kind of hoping that it wasn't going to happen like that.
Yeah, I thought that maybe they'd switch it up and do Maggie instead. Yeah. I kind of had a bad feeling for their relationship, but in the comics, Negan doesn't kill women or children, correct?
It's been a long time since I've watched it. I've read it.
But I don't know. Personally, episode-wise, I thought that it was a really solid episode, and it'll probably set up the tone for what the season's going to be really well. That being said, we're kind of back into the swing of things with The Walking Dead. The big cliffhangers settled. At this point, we have another 4 or 5 episodes before something big happens, and they got to stretch out. We've talked about it time and time again. I think we reviewed season 6 back earlier this year, and show's just kind of boring now, man, to me. I don't know. Every so often you have these big episodes, which are fun to watch, but I'm not excited for this show anymore.
Yeah, and I think the episode, the season premiere, was kind of the perfect example of why I am kind of lukewarm on the show, because there was bits of it that I really liked. I love Negan in it. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, Jeffrey Dean Morgan's awesome.
But then there was stretches even within this episode. The Rick and Negan stuff was kind of milked a little bit. I also didn't like how they milked it at the very beginning, who was going to get it.
Yeah.
I was like, come on, we've waited this long. I was already pissed that they milked it to begin with. And so the fact that they even squeezed even a little bit more out of it was kind of irritating. So it was kind of the perfect example of why I don't want to say dislike the show, because I don't. I still really enjoy it. It's just I'm definitely, I think, in the minority of people, because I think either people don't watch it or they absolutely love it. And I think there's not that many people that just are kind of like us, that are just kind of lukewarm about it.
Yeah, which is weird to me.
Yeah.
Like, people still are crazy about this show, and I personally don't see how.
Yeah.
Like, after the earlier seasons, I don't know.
It's funny because we record this podcast every week, and we record it in my nerd room or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at you while we're recording it, and I have my Walking Dead poster that I got like after season 1 or something like that, when the show was really, really good before they went on the farm on season 2.
See, I don't even mind season 2 that much. I think that Frank Darabont leaving really just kind of ended up doing it in for that show a little bit.
For sure.
I love Greg Nicotero. He seems like a really cool guy, really great ideas. But when you make him like one of the creative points of the show, it's going to be style over substance, because that's what he does, is stylized things. And like the zombies still look great and things are still gross and realistic, but the story's not there like it was earlier.
For sure.
All right. That is all I have for nerd news. I'm ready for some Shocktober.
All right. Like we kind of teased earlier in the episode, we are going to do our Shocktober recap. We're recording this on Saturday, so the 29th of October. This won't actually be released until Halloween, the 31st, on Monday. And so for those that are new to the show, I guess, we talk about this all the time, so you would have to be new to not to know what we're talking about. But Shocktober is a month-long celebration of the horror genre, where Tyler and I try to watch a horror movie every day of October. Like I mentioned before, I've had a really, really busy October, just getting our Shocktober short ready for Shocktober in Irvington, and some other stuff that I've been doing. It was fun, but super, super stressful. Unfortunately, that meant that it was kind of a piss poor Shocktober for me. I don't know about you, Tyler. We'll kind of get into our stats here in a second.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll let you finish, but it's tough because, like you said, it's not over yet. So
yeah, I mean, we still got a couple more days. I plan on watching at least a couple tonight, and then maybe 1 or 2 tomorrow. And of course, I'll be watching The Walking Dead as well, which I kind of not really count as far as my stats, but it's all about the celebration of horror, and I still consider that part of that celebration. So yeah, we still got a couple more days, so I can catch up. But obviously, we can only talk about our stats as of today.
Absolutely.
Like I said, it's the 29th. I've only watched 24 horror films, so I'm quite a few behind. I normally, the last couple of Shocktobers that we've done, I have hit like 33 and 34, so I actually went over. This year, I'm going to have to watch like 4 or 5 just to catch up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of disappointing, but like I said, I'll get a couple in tonight.
So I've watched 26.
Okay.
So I'm a couple behind. I think that I will end up hitting 31 right on the nose when it's all said and done, because I will watch a couple tonight and a couple tomorrow, and I know I have time to do that. So I think that I will get to 31 when it's all said and done. That being said, I do want to share this with you. My buddy Jake, who you know, I had told him what Shocktober was earlier this year. He's like, oh, that's fun. I might do it. And he's like in the 40s.
Oh, really?
Like he was just like, oh yeah, maybe I'll do that. And he's fucking killing it. So.
Oh yeah. Well, good for him.
Yeah. Fucking Jake.
I was being sincere.
No, he really took to it. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
I like
absolutely.
to convert people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's fun.
Everybody should do it.
So have you, I mean, I know your numbers are down, but like you said, you're probably going to hit 31. I don't think I will hit 31, but like, did you have any goals going in other than obviously the 31 films? And did you hit those goals? Do you think it's all in all will be a successful Shocktober?
Probably not, because I've done hardly any staples.
Okay.
So I feel like going into Shocktober, I have lofty goals for as far as my staples go. Like, oh man, I can't wait to watch this, and this.
Yeah.
And then when it comes down to it, and it's just like a lazy Saturday afternoon, and I'm trying to find something to watch, I find that I want to find something new.
Yeah.
So
I get that.
Yeah. So I haven't revisited my staples as well as I should have. And that's disappointing to me because most of the new stuff I've watched has been pretty terrible. So that's what's most disappointing to me. Instead of sticking with the stuff that I know is going to be great, I've taken some chances and been burned.
Yeah, I actually I didn't do this on purpose this year, but I actually kind of went towards more like campy, kind of fun, kind of comedy horror. Like I finally watched Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which is really fun. I watched Ghostbusters. Like I watched some more comedic horror movies. And so that's been a lot of fun. Like I don't usually do that. I usually stick to kind of your typical horror movies. And so I liked that. It wasn't something that I kind of went into Shocktober. Hey, I'm going to switch it up and try to do this. I'm going to have a whole week of comedy, but it kind of happened that way.
Yeah.
So even though my numbers are down, I still think that it was successful because I kind of revisited some of these other movies that, Sweeney Todd probably doesn't necessarily count per se, but I'm glad that I watched it because it'd been a while since I watched it and I really like that movie.
Yeah.
So
no, that's fair. I think it counts personally, but
yeah. So you had mentioned your staples. You just kind of want to run through some of those for new listeners that don't know what we're talking about.
So you want me to run through like what my staples would be, or So like off the top of my head, I don't have them written down. I think I wrote them down for last year. Things like the original Halloween, obviously. Yeah. I have not watched it yet. I plan on watching that by the time Shocktober's over. The Thing, Scream. Let's see. I wanted to revisit some things that I really loved that I haven't seen in a while, like Signs and Sixth Sense, because I haven't seen those movies in quite some time.
Don't mean to cut you off, but I keep forgetting that we need to do trailer trash for Split, because that movie looks like fucking garbage. Oh my God, every time. I went and saw Inferno today, and they showed that awful trailer. But anyways, continue.
No, and then Cabin in the Woods has become a staple for me, and I did watch that. And then last year was my first time really getting into it, and it's become a staple as well as Rocky Horror. And I watched that once this Shocktober. So I did get to those two. And I'm sure I'm missing a couple of those things I would refer to as staples, but those are the big ones.
Yeah, I've only gotten to a couple of my staples. I'll run through a few of them. I did watch The Crazies, the remake. I mean, I do like the original, obviously, being a George Romero fan, but I don't know. It's one of the rare remakes that I like more the original. Like, I think they cleaned up some stuff from the original. I just think it's a tighter movie. I haven't watched The Thing. I actually was going to watch the prequel, and then I was going to watch the original one.
The John Carpenter one.
Yes, the John Carpenter one, even though that's a remake as well. But I couldn't find the prequel legally to watch, and I own obviously the John Carpenter version, so I didn't do that, and I ended up just watching something just new. Like you said, a lot of times you just kind of gravitate to something that you've never seen before. So I haven't got to watch that. I did watch The Mist, and I love that movie so much.
Yeah, I watched that one as well, and I haven't watched it in a couple of years.
Hates it.
The end.
Hates it. It's the end. Yeah, because he has to kill the little kid.
Yeah.
I was really digging that movie the first time I watched it, and then the ending just blew me away. I was like, that's so fantastic. I mean, it's horrible, obviously, but I love the fact that what's her name from The Walking Dead.
I know who you're talking about. I don't know.
Is on the, like, if they had done the right thing, they would have been fine. I love that. I love that so much.
Whenever I was watching, I was reading the trivia on IMDb, and they actually wanted to shoot. She goes by on her truck, and then another truck goes by, like, carrying a bunch of people from the fucking grocery store.
Oh, and then if they had just stayed.
Yeah, so, but
that would have been really shitty.
Yeah, apparently most of the cast had already left, so they couldn't shoot it, and that's why. But yeah, that would have been.
I actually read somewhere that, because it's based on a Stephen King, I don't think it's a novel.
Yeah, I'm pretty
it's like
a short story. Yep.
And he was actually mad at Frank Darabont. He thought that was such a better ending than the way he had ended it. So I thought that was pretty funny. But continuing the Shocktober staples, I have not watched The Descent yet. I really love that movie a lot. One. I was actually going to watch it last night, but my wife hates that movie as well. And so we watched something else instead. But I'll probably get to at least a couple of those before the end. But I probably won't get all of them in this year, which is a disappointment, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's talk about some movies that you liked. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a movie that you haven't seen before, but just something that...
All right. This one's going to be harder than the movies I didn't like. So I've watched a lot of shit this Shocktober. So the movies I liked that weren't staples. So I'll do like first time viewings. I watched The Shallows for the first time.
Okay, cool.
I enjoyed that. I watched this anthology horror movie called Tales of Halloween. It's not fantastic. It's no Trick or Treat, but there were some entertaining stories within it. I watched it really early actually on October 1st. So it kind of set the mood for the rest of Shocktober. Let's see what else. I ended up watching Howl, which was a movie that you recommended that I liked. Let's see. I talked about Knock Knock a couple episodes ago. That one was okay. I'm just going through first time viewings I really liked. So I watched What We Do in the Shadows, and of course I love that movie. And I watched a couple other movies I've seen before, so I'm just kind of skipping over those. I didn't like... Oh, I'll save that for didn't like it.
Okay.
But, man, there's a lot of shit that I did not like. Pet Sematary. I watched that for the first time.
Oh, yeah? I mean, if you take it for what it is, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, like it was dark. I don't want to say it was darker than what I thought, because I knew like the kid died and they bury the kid.
Sure.
And it comes back. But it was more violent than I thought it would be for sure. Besides that, there was a movie that Brittany and I watched last week for the first time. It's called Emily, but it's spelled weird. It's Emelie.
That's dumb.
And it's this movie about this babysitter that comes and watches these kids. Obviously, that's what babysitters do, I suppose.
Yep.
But she's not who they think she is, and she starts doing really weird, fucked up shit with the kids. Brittany and I got uncomfortable watching it for sure. But nice. I mean, that's what it was going for, and it was kind of interesting. Like I wouldn't give that a huge score or a great score, but it's definitely a little fucked up. So if you're looking for something fucked up, watch Emily.
Okay, cool, man.
But yeah, those are some of the ones I liked for first viewings.
All right, so I'm just going to scroll down my Letterboxd and kind of pick out some of the ones that I really liked. I don't know if I've talked about this. I'm sure I have on past Shocktobers, but I really enjoy The Loved Ones. Have you ever seen that?
I want to watch that. That's the cannibal movie, right?
Yes, sort of.
The one with the dad and the two girls?
The dad and the girl. There's just one girl. I mean, There's a woman.
On the poster, aren't there two females and a male? Maybe we're not thinking of the same movie. But
no, I don't think we are. But it's an Australian horror film. It kind of reminds me a lot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is actually not a movie that I really like that much, but I really dig this movie a lot. It's really, really violent. So if you don't like super gory things, then I would definitely stay away from this, because it gets a little hard to watch at times, but there's a couple of different turns that you don't necessarily see. At least I didn't the first time I watched it. And this was actually the movie that I started off Shocktober with, and I was pretty happy about that. I watched Mama, and it was a movie I'd seen a couple of times. I think that we saw it in theaters, and I remember liking it despite the ending, and pretty much the same thoughts as I dig that movie a lot. I wish the ending was a little bit better, but other than that, it was good. I talked about Howl, so I won't get into that again, but it's fantastic. Sinister is good. Sweeney Todd, again, it kind of teeters the line whether or not it qualifies or not, but I really enjoy that movie a lot. Tucker and Dale versus Evil is really, really funny. I like that movie quite a lot, and I'm kind of embarrassed that it took me this long to finally get around to it. I don't know who the big guy is in that movie. I don't know his name, but did you ever see Reaper?
No, I know.
He's really good in that show. Definitely watch Reaper. It's really funny. Trying to find another one that of course, Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is one of my favorite movies of all time.
The original.
Yes, the original. Fuck that other movie.
If you haven't gathered that already.
I mean, I love Ghostbusters, The Mist, The Crazies, all that good stuff, but I think that's it for my highlights. Do you have a new movie you watched from your list that stood great? Howl, but I mean, I've already talked about that on a past episode, so I won't get into that. I actually watched two new ones last night.
Okay.
Observance and Splinter. Nah, I mean, neither one of them were bad, but they didn't blow me away or anything like that.
Yeah, I wanted to see Splinter when it came out, so
oh really?
I'll probably avoid it.
It was all right. It wasn't great.
Maybe like 6 or 7 years ago when it came out.
Yeah, it's been out for a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned that you had a lot that you wanted to shit on. So go ahead.
So let's see. I'm gonna save one for last because it was my least favorite viewing of Shocktober.
Okay.
Let's see. Would You Rather wasn't very good. That was
Oh, I heard that was kind of good.
It was. So watch. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's one I'm more indifferent to. Like, it's not terrible, but I don't know that it kind of skirts the line of a horror movie. I don't know if it's horror, thriller. I don't think it knows what it wants to be. Let's see. The Jeffrey Dahmer Files. I watched that on Hulu. That was really boring. Ginger Snaps. Fuck that movie. That movie was awful.
That looks bad.
It was like, but it's a werewolf movie. So I'm like, oh, I should give this a shot. It is.
You would give that movie a shot, but not Wolfcop.
I don't want to see a dick turn. But what's weird about that movie is whenever Ginger finally turns into a werewolf at the end, spoiler alert, I guess, her werewolf has boobs.
Nice.
No, it's really.
You should have led with that.
It's weird and gross. Like I don't know how I feel about it. Obviously the new Rocky Horror Picture Show was on here. Not great. Curse of Chucky. Don't know why I watched it.
Oh my God.
But I did. And
I'm not a fan of that whole franchise, to be honest with you.
No, I don't know how it has had such long legs. I think whenever it started to kind of take the comedy route, that's what made it kind of like the cult classic. And then this movie revisited the horror aspect of it, and it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Like, it actually has a pretty good rating on Rotten Tomatoes, but I mean, obviously not great. And then the last one that I really just it's just so bad. Holidays. So,
okay. I had heard about it, but it didn't look
so I watched it. All. It's an anthology movie with a different horror movie taking place on each, most major holidays. And, the reason I watched it was because Kevin Smith directed the Halloween.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
The Halloween story. It's bad. Not a single one of them.
So not even his.
No, his is the worst. No,
oh, really?
No, Easter is the worst.
Okay.
His is really bad though, because you would think in a horror movie based on each holiday, like Halloween would be the standout.
For sure.
It's not. It's really perverted and gross, and he kind of put like his little Kevin Smith charm into it, but it doesn't work. And I won't spoil what happens in his, but I am going to spoil what happens in Easter because I can't even say it with a straight face. So Easter starts off with this mom and her kid talking about the Easter Bunny and don't let the Easter Bunny see you, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, the kid gets up and sees the Easter Bunny, which is like a mutant hybrid between a bunny and Jesus.
Okay.
So it's like Jesus with a bunny face, and they go through some shit, and basically
it sounds like Jesus already went through some shit.
It turns into like the Santa Claus with Tim Allen. Like, he's like, you're the first child to ever see me, so now I have to pass this on to you. And so she becomes the Easter Bunny creature.
Does she have boobs?
She's a little girl.
Does she have boobs?
No, she doesn't. But it's just so bad, and I don't get it. I don't get it at all. So that movie took the cake. Like, I hated that worse than the new Rocky Horror.
Impossible.
For sure I did. 100%. There was no enjoyment in that movie. So that was my worst for Shocktober for sure, was Holidays.
I have a couple I want to talk about. I'll be real quick with the first one. The Amityville Horror came out in 2005.
Yep.
I remember really liking this movie.
That movie scared me when I first saw it.
Yeah. I remember like seeing it in theaters and remembering like even at the daytime it was scary. And you don't usually see that, especially way back then in 2005. Like, that was a big deal to me. Like, usually in horror movies, like during the daytime, you're safe. And that movie, you weren't safe.
Yeah.
But then I watched it just recently. I was like, this movie kind of sucks. Like, the acting's not great. The jump scares are kind of pathetic. And I don't know. It just wasn't very good.
Yeah.
And I don't remember why I liked it as much as I did. This movie, He Never Died, wasn't bad. It just, for me, it got pumped up really high, and I was really excited to see it, and it was kind of boring. Like, not a whole lot happens. I don't know if it necessarily even qualifies for Shocktober, but I heard it was a horror movie. Henry Rollins is like demon who apparently can have sex and have kids, and it's just really weird, and Henry Rollins is not a very good actor. And basically the whole movie is him walking around, and he's not a very good actor, so it just didn't work for me. It wasn't necessarily a bad movie. Nothing significant happens. I didn't really dig it that much. Final Destination, I remember liking that movie when it first came out. It's not bad, but I don't know why I liked it so much.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just kind of the concept itself was kind of cool to me, but about halfway through the movie, I was like, this is kind of stupid. I talked about The Girl on the Train. I didn't really like that movie. Rocky Horror Picture Show, the remake, so far is the worst movie I've seen this year, but I mean, obviously we just talked about it, so I won't go back into that. The Woman in Black was kind of boring. Didn't really dig that much. I don't know. I don't dig ghost stories that much because I don't believe in ghosts, so it doesn't really scare me at all. Yeah. So I don't know why I even watched it. I had heard some good things about it, but once I found out it was a ghost story, I don't know why I even bothered with it. Rocky Horror for me is the one that kind of takes its cake. It's the worst, not just the worst Shocktober movie. It's got to be the worst movie I've seen so far.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be holidays for me. Like, it's not only just worst Shocktober, it's worst all year.
So, unless there's anything else, I think that's pretty much wraps up our Shocktober recap.
I mean, it sounds like we're a little disappointed with our Shocktober efforts, but, you know, in place of maybe watching some of our staples or watching as many as we wanted to, we, you know, made a short movie.
Yeah.
Or a short film. And
that was actually, not to kind of harp on it and make excuses, but there was an entire week where I don't think I watched, well, at least 5 days straight where I didn't watch a single horror movie until I watched the shorts at Shocktober in Irvington because I was working on ours. So it's like I was still doing something in relation to Shocktober. But
absolutely, man.
I'm still trying to catch up because of that.
Yeah, absolutely, dude.
All right. So in the spirit of Halloween, because this episode is going to drop on Halloween, the 31st. I thought it'd be kind of fun we finish each episode by kind of taking turns asking each other a really nerdy question, what your favorite blank is. The subject changes from episode to episode. And like I said, this episode is going to drop on Halloween. So I thought it would be fun to ask you what your favorite Halloween costume was. Not necessarily as a kid. I actually am going to kind of cop out, and I have a couple of answers that I'm going to talk about, but I've always dug Halloween. I liked dressing up for Halloween, and my favorite, and I think it's actually just kind of my favorite because I like the costume, but also just kind of a funny story. So I dressed up as Tommy Lee Jones's Two-Face one Halloween. So we got the whole costume, like the suit and everything, and I had a mask. And at my old school in Belfast, New York, we used to have on Halloween, or if it like fell on the weekend, we'd have it on Friday or whatever. We'd always have they called it a parade, but it was just us walking through the school, and then we'd kind of end it in the gym.
Yeah.
And we'd have a costume contest. And I think I won it one year, but I don't even remember what I was that year that I won it. But I just remember thinking, man, I'm going to win it this year. My Two-Face is awesome. And my parents or somebody had recorded it. And I watched it the next day because I was bummed that I didn't win. I forgot to fucking tuck the mask in. And so it looked all jacked up. So I'm still bitter to this day that I didn't win because I forgot to tuck the mask in.
Yeah.
But anyways, so that probably will be my official answer. But last year I had a lot of fun scaring the shit out of the little kids because this was the first year that we had a house for Halloween. So it was the first year that, I mean, we've gotten a couple trick-or-treaters here and there and in a couple of different apartments that I've lived in here in Evansville, but that's kind of weird going apartment to apartment as a kid. So we didn't get too many. So this was the first year that we actually had, for real trick-or-treaters. And so, my wife and I dressed up as a couple of the intruders from Your Next. And I scared the shit out of pretty much every little kid that came up to the door because we have a bench that sits out in kind of like our walkway when you're walking to the front door. And so I would sit as still as I could because our house was kind of at the end of the cul-de-sac. So I would see them coming from the right and I would just stay as still as I possibly could. And I sat the thing of candy right next to me. And so I would wait for him to reach for it and I would just leap up and I got every single one of them and it was awesome. And then we actually ended up going on the pub crawl later that night and some drunk guy yelled, "Yo, Ninja Goat." Because that was the sheep guy.
I forgot about that.
"Yo, Ninja Goat." So I thought that was hilarious.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Two-Face, but that was also fun last year.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to pick out a favorite. There were just so many that I wore growing up, and I think that if you were to look at a different picture of me from kindergarten on with all the different costumes I did,
I was a parrot. I won when I was a parrot. I'm sorry.
Perfect. Yeah, glad we got that out there. If you look at a picture like from kindergarten on, you would see why I am the nerd I am today. Like every year it was a different pop culture figure. So like kindergarten, I was the Red Ranger, and then first grade I was Batman, and second grade I was the Mask, and third grade I was Darth Vader. So just so on and so forth all through grade school. I would say The Mask was probably one of my favorites because I really liked that movie when I was little.
Really?
But, in college, I did pretty well for myself as well. Like freshman year of college, I went as Indiana Jones, and I was pretty proud of the
slutty Indiana Jones.
No, I was pretty proud of the Indiana Jones costume I threw together on a college budget. And then the next year, I was the Punisher.
Slutty Punisher. I'm going to do it for everyone.
And those two costumes, I did pretty well for myself on Halloween. So, I don't know. Probably the Mask growing up, but I don't have anything exciting. Like my parents didn't make me a parrot one year where I got to win a contest or anything, but
now I'm not so sure about that answer. It may have not been the parrot.
I usually about 2 months out from Halloween, I always get really ambitious ideas. And then by the time I'm ready to like get all the stuff together, it's the week before and I can't get it all. And it just doesn't happen. That's
been another thing that's kind of been disappointing this year because of the Shocktober short. We didn't get to decorate because I didn't know what we were going to have to reshoot because everything we did was at my house. Yeah. So I didn't want to decorate and break the scene or anything like that. So we got to the point where once we were finished, it was like 2 weeks before Halloween. And it was like, it takes us like at least 3 or 4 hours to decorate. Cause I mean, we go all out. Like last year, I had a shit ton of decorations and I really enjoy it, but I felt like that was kind of a waste of time if it was only going to be up for 2 weeks. So we have a few things here and there, but not a lot. And I also don't really have any plans to do anything for Halloween. So I didn't even get a costume. I thought about doing Court of Owls last year. Yeah. I thought that would be a kind of a cool costume and it wouldn't be that hard either, but it just I never got around to it. Yeah,
I've almost bought that mask a few times because that's a super easy costume and it's like the people that get it, and those are the people you want to be friends with. So
yeah, and it's kind of creepy by itself.
Yeah.
So even if they don't get the reference, at least it's still pretty creepy.
For sure, man.
All right, so that is it for episode 116 of the Nerd You're Looking For podcast. As always, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. It's both at the Nerds Podcast. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Google+. Vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. You can rate, subscribe, all that good stuff on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any good podcatcher you use, we're on it. You can email us at thenerdsyou'relooking4@gmail.com. You can also check out my stand-up, like I talked about earlier, at Someplace Else here on Main Street in Evansville. So definitely check that out. That's November 3rd. I think tickets are $10, maybe? I don't know. I should probably check that out before I pimped it on here. But yeah, that should be a really fun show. So definitely check that out. I have another show coming up in December at French Lake. So I'll give you more details closer to that show as well. For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt,
we are the Nerds You're Looking For. Take it easy, guys.
Later, guys.